Good afternoon. Today is October 17th, 2024. My name is Thomas Toft. I am a qualified tax expert with the West Michigan Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, part of Legal Aid of Western Michigan. Today, I'll be talking about what is an IRS Notice CP 2000? It's not a bill. Now, before we get started, I want to mention that this is not legal advice. Nothing in this presentation is a substitute for a private consultation with an attorney regarding a legal problem. The information in this presentation relates to the current state of tax law. Tax laws can change. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into it. The IRS sends lots of notices and letters. Some ask taxpayers to respond. For example, the IRS has a question about a tax return. The IRS needs to verify identity. The IRS needs additional information. The IRS changed their tax return. IRS examination is seeking documents. Or the IRS proposes more tax owed from unreported income. This last item is why the IRS sends a Notice CP 2000. The IRS computer systems show you received income that was not on your tax return. The IRS thinks you owe it tax on that income, so it sends a notice. I want to stress that a Notice CP 2000 is not a bill. A Notice CP 2000 only proposes that you owe an amount because that is what the IRS thinks you may owe it. If you believe the notice is wrong and you don't owe what is proposed, you can challenge the proposed amount. The notice lets you know that you can send the IRS an explanation of why you disagree. But notice, there is a deadline given in the notice for you to send an explanation of your disagreement. Let's take a look at the Notice CP 2000. This is part of page 1 from a CP 2000. I have put my comments in blue shade. If you look to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that is where the notice number is. So if you get a notice or a letter from the IRS in the mail, you can look in the upper right-hand or sometimes the lower right-hand corners, and usually there will be a notice or letter number. Today we're dealing with a Notice CP 2000, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner where it says CP 2000. To the bottom of this slide, you can see where I've kind of circled and highlighted that there are comments on the actual notice that it is a proposed amount. And it literally says this is not a bill. It's important to remember when you get this, don't get nervous, don't worry, don't think that you have to send some money right now. This is just the IRS saying they think you owe. This isn't a bill, and it's just a proposed amount. Now in the first pages of a CP 2000, there's a section letting you know how to respond to the proposed changes. The IRS wants to hear back from you. And you can see the notice itself says, if you agree with the proposed changes, you can complete and sign and date a response form and send it back to the IRS saying you agree. The notice also lets you know that if you don't agree with the proposed changes, you can complete an enclosed response form and send it to the IRS along with an explanation of why you disagree and any supporting documents. In the middle of a Notice CP 2000, there are details on the proposed adjustments. Now, I've redacted the specific numbers on this example, but you can see that this is where the IRS will go line by line explaining how it calculated the proposed amount. It'll explain what it changed and what the dollar amounts are and how it got to the tax it thinks you owe. The middle pages of a CP 2000 also explain what unreported income caused the notice to be sent to you. On this example, it was PayPal that sent the IRS information about monies being deposited into the PayPal account for the PayPal account owner. The PayPal sent a 1099-K to the IRS. The IRS didn't see that income reflected on the return, and so it sent this notice to a taxpayer saying, hey, you got some money, we think you owe tax on it. So when you get a CP 2000, you're wondering, why did the IRS send this to me? Go to the middle pages, you'll see the line by line information, how they calculated it, but you can also see a list of the payor or several payors that send information to the IRS about you receiving monies that the IRS did not see reflected on your return. At the end of a CP 2000 is a response form. I want to let you know to be careful. The form has a place where you can check a box and sign to agree with all the proposed changes and the amount due. Don't check the box and or sign here if you want to challenge the notice. Every year, I have some people that come to us for help, and what has happened is they got the notice CP 2000 and they got nervous, worried, didn't really agree with it, but in their response, they went down here and actually checked, I agree with all the changes, and sent it to the IRS. If you don't agree with all the proposed changes, don't check the box saying you agree and don't sign off on it. I should also note that I have run into taxpayers who have gotten a CP 2000 and have called the IRS to ask, what do I do? And have been advised by the IRS, even though the taxpayers don't agree with everything, they're told, just sign the form, check where you agree, send it in, and then you can fix some of these things later. That's bad advice. If you don't agree with everything, don't check the box that you agree, sign, date it, and send that back. On the second part of the response form is where you can check a box to let the IRS know that you disagree with the proposed changes. You can mail your response to the IRS's address on the notice, or you can fax it to the IRS using the number given. But be sure to keep a copy of what you sent to the IRS and proof it was sent, such as certified mail receipt, fax transmittal report, etc. I want to give you a tip. If the deadline to respond is almost up and you disagree but need time to gather information for your response, you can send an initial response just letting the IRS know you disagree and that you'll be sending more information supporting your disagreement soon. If you do this, don't forget to send the info to the IRS soon. If you want to respond but you wait and go past the deadline, the IRS could close their case on this underreporter notice and assume that you owe the money. So it is better to just send a short disagreement, letting them know that you do disagree and you're going to get more information to them and send that information thereafter. So what happens after you agree with a CP 2000. If you send the IRS a response that you agree with the proposed changes in the CP 2000, you give up certain rights to challenge the changes. The IRS will make the changes to your return. You will owe the IRS the proposed amount, and the IRS will send you a bill. But what happens after disagreeing with a CP 2000? After you send a response to the IRS disagreeing with proposed changes, it will review the response and may ask for more info. But eventually the IRS will accept everything you argue for in your challenge, accept nothing you argue for in your challenge, or it may accept just some of the things you argue for in your challenge. The IRS will send you a notice letting you know if it's going to make all, just some, or none of the changes it proposed. If the IRS makes no changes that it originally proposed, you're done and you don't have to do anything. The IRS will send you a letter letting you know this. If the IRS is still going to make some of the changes it originally proposed, the IRS will send you a revised CP 2000 showing updated changes with a new proposed amount. You can either agree or disagree with the revised CP 2000. If you disagree with the revised CP 2000, but the IRS does not accept your disagreement, then it will send you a notice CP 3219A, which is a notice of deficiency. If the IRS is going to make all of the changes it originally proposed, which means it didn't accept any of your arguments, then the IRS will send you a notice CP 3219A, which is a notice of deficiency. So what is this CP 3219A, notice of deficiency? Well, this is your legal notice that the IRS is proposing a deficiency. It's important to understand that the IRS is still just proposing an amount due at this point. A notice of deficiency is not a bill. The notice of deficiency provides you with information about your right to challenge proposed IRS adjustments in U.S. tax court. But you must file a petition with the court within 90 days of the date of your notice of deficiency, or 150 days if the notice is addressed to a person outside the U.S. But there's one thing I want to caution you about. A notice of deficiency may say you can still try to work things out directly with the IRS. If you do this, but don't file a petition by the deadline, and then the IRS doesn't change its mind, you've lost your right to sue in U.S. tax court. If you miss your deadline to file a petition, and the IRS does not change its mind about adjustments it makes, then you will owe the IRS. Sometimes I have taxpayers that come to us who have received a notice of deficiency, and they contact the IRS, and the IRS tells them, work with us, we'll try to get things sorted out. In the meantime, they do not file a petition with the tax court. Time goes by, things drag on, and eventually the deadline is passed for filing a petition, and then the IRS says, no, we think we're right. We're going to leave these changes. We're going to make these changes. You owe us. At that point, it's too late to sue. Be careful not to get caught in that if you really want to challenge this. If you have a right to sue in tax court, you can try to work with the IRS, but it's important that you understand once the deadline is missed for filing a petition, you can't go to tax court then. And now it's just up to the IRS whether they agree or disagree with the things that you are arguing, and you're not going to have the independent body of a court making the decision on the matter. So now that we've gone over what's in the CP 2000. We talked about if you agree, if you disagree on this notice of deficiency. I'd like to share some resources. I always mention that there is free tax preparation. Some people qualify for free tax prep help, especially those with low or moderate income, disabilities, limited English proficiency, or those aged 60 plus. Look into volunteer income tax assistance and tax counseling for the elderly programs at this IRS website. You can also check out United Way's My Free Taxes at www.myfreetaxes.com. Additionally, you can call 211 during the filing season and ask for free tax preparation. Most free tax services are only open during tax filing season, but some are open year-round. I'm also providing some links to helpful resources. So if you do get a CP 2000, you can go to various sites given here to learn more about the notice. I also put in a link to IRS Publication 5181, Tax Return Reviews by Mail, which does cover CP 2000 underreporter notices. And here's some information about those notices of deficiency. I have a link here to the United States Tax Court. It has a very extensive section for people who are suing the IRS that tells you how to get a case started, what to expect, requirements of evidence, things of that nature. And then there's a Taxpayer Advocate Service website for help resolving your balance due if you do end up owing the IRS. This is a good link that has a lot of the different options there are to try and address the debt that you owe. Are there any questions? Okay then. Well, I appreciate you taking your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, goodbye.